It's your number one station, RX Radio, playing you so much cool music. I hope you had a great weekend. Here we are, Monday, and Christmas not far away. Christmas just what? Let me do the math. That would be 13 days away. Less than 2 weeks, so you better be ready. Also, you better be ready for interesting attempts that are being made to curb incidents of sexual violence and sexual harassment in workplaces. The Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development has instituted a committee to fight these vices. Now, this committee, which was launched in Kampala last week, constitutes 25 members from ministries, state agencies, and also non-government organizations. And among them includes the International Labour Organization, World Bank, UNAIDS, European Union. Yeah, just rattling off those names just lets you know that they're probably only doing this because there's some big money involved. Otherwise, why start now and not before, where the same complaints have been made for a very long time? It sounds awfully convenient, and you know how things work here in Uganda. But anyway, the permanent secretary of the Gender Ministry, Agre David Chibenge, said that the committee will provide oversight and strategic technical advisory services. So what do you think about this, Olive?
It's about time. It's about time. We have heard about sexual harassment in places of work for a long time. I mean, since time immemorial. So if they're doing it now, I'm not going to ask them why they didn't do it earlier. I'm going to appreciate the fact that they are doing it right now.
Okay, so now when you contrast with certain more conservative countries, so for example, we look at the Islamic countries where they tend to have a more old-fashioned approach in how they view the relationship between men and women, and in under what conditions they can occupy the same spaces, and if at all, because in some instances they don't even allow it. Do you feel that in trying to create an egalitarian society in which we operate under the premise that men and women can exist within a space in a non-sexual manner, don't you think that part of that is a pipe dream? I mean, it's a very fashionable ideal, perhaps one to even aspire for, but is it realistic?
It is
I
realistic.
think if you put men and women in a similar workspace, it'll be, in my opinion, impossible to remove the aspect of sexual attraction. And depending on how one approaches, let's say, the object of their attraction and how they attempt to engage with the person and obtain their interest, it can very easily be misconstrued or interpreted as being an act of harassment.
Yes.
And I think because it's not a black and white issue, and that there's a lot of nuance involved in it, which is a point that I failed to convey to Sarah the last time her and I were talking about this under a different context. I feel like that's why there's not been much movement. So I wonder if a proponent of, say, okay, so let's say an activist who is in support of such a project and such a campaign, if such an activist would be willing to concede that there is room for conversation in what would count as harassment, or is it a black and white issue to even say, because depending, do you know, in some countries, like in the West, to even say to a woman, "Oh, you look beautiful today," like that,
some people misconstrue that as sexual harassment.
That's sexual harassment. No. Or someone may, tap a female colleague on the shoulder as they're greeting them. Mm-hmm. "Hey, how you doing today? Hey,
but you see, if
good job, Olive." And then she's like, "I was harassed."
But you see, if you're living in an environment like in the West where you know that all these things are happening, then you shouldn't be doing them. But coming back to Uganda, I will go with Uganda, where I know when the ministry and all these agencies came up with this idea, they are not they suggested that there should be measures, there should be streamlined measures of, if you do this, if you do that, if you do this is sexual harassment. And I'm happy to say that in an organization, a big organization where I worked for quite some time, I never heard of a case of sexual harassment, because in the rules of procedure for the organization, it was streamlined. It was spelled out very well. Everyone knew what sexual harassment meant in that organization. For instance, if your boss was funny with you in any way suggestive, that would be interpreted as sexual harassment. Now, your argument is that some people sometimes find love in places of work. I believe that as a grown woman and a grown man, when you're attracted to each other, you can actually understand each other. Like, if you like me and I like you, there is a vibe we have. And yes.
Wait. So that's where, for me, the potential problem arises. Because sometimes people have to be persuaded into liking a person. I don't know if your experience is different, but I would hazard to guess that there were probably instances where a person first approached you and you didn't like them.
And if people don't...
and that possibly you might even push them away.
If they are workmates, honestly, love in the place of work is complicated. If the object or the person of your interest is a workmate and you try to approach them, you try to show interest and they show they are not interested, for you to avoid a sexual harassment case, you need to stay away. Leave them alone. A no in this instance should be a no for you to avoid trouble.
So the question is, in how the terms are defined. So in the organization that you worked for, would it, for example, say, was it a blanket no, in other words, to never ever express that kind of romantic interest?
We were not allowed to have intimate relationships with workmates, but of course they used to happen. But because
if it was a financial institution, in fact, isn't it ironic how financial institutions, corporate companies that have all these stringent rules have the highest incidences of intra-institution romance.
It's not even about financial institutions. Fatboy, if you work with people from
I've lost several girlfriends.
From 8 to 5 p.m. every single day throughout the year, chances are that you're going to find someone. You're going to get attracted to someone.
I have lost countless number of girlfriends
to bankers.
To office affairs. And as you point out, if say you have a girlfriend, you're working in different places. At best, you're meeting each other a few times a week if you're not living together.
Yes.
Maybe even just weekends when you have time. Meanwhile, Monday to Friday, she spends the whole day close to someone.
No, by the way, let me tell you this. The assumption out there is that the people who fall for each other in the same workplace or in the same organization are actually close to each other. It doesn't happen that way, because sometimes you will find a girl working in a branch in Kampala and the guy she's interested in the bank is in Mbali. Ask me how that happened.
How does it
Office calls. You call IT, you're like, hi IT, I have this issue. And the guy is like, oh my goodness, Olive, you have such a nice voice. Before you know it, every day when you go to work, you're looking forward to speak to James from IT, or you're looking forward to speaking to someone from audit or compliance. So these relationships don't necessarily happen between people who sit in the same office. It's the same organization. So you meet for town hall meetings, you meet for company parties and all these other things that bring you together, but you do not sit in the same office every day.
Okay. Well, there's so many instances of such interactions occurring. Sometimes it leads to just simple relationships. Normally, it leads to short flings. They tend to not last very long anyway.
Yeah.
Because for one reason or other, usually because either party or both are already married.
And you
so that such a relationship doesn't stand a chance of lasting.
Yeah, but for us not to go away from sexual harassment in offices, it really happens. We've all heard about carpet interviews or carpet interviews for promotions where the boss will be like, okay, so there is this opening and I see you applied. How do you help me help you?
Well, I think this goes back to do you remember the conversation we were having about people who sleep with lecturers, where in some instances it's the precondition for getting a passing grade. Like, if you don't sleep with the lecturer, he will fail you, even if you've done well in the class or the exam. Whereas, versus a scenario in which he tells her, look, you have actually failed and I should write F on your report. As you can see, you got all the answers wrong. However, if you'd maybe date me, then maybe I might.
That is still sexual harassment. Why are you presenting that as a condition? Let her just receipt the paper.
No. That's in. He presents the option because
why is
just listen to me. All factors remaining constant, she will get served the report that reads F as.
So why is he saying date me? I'm
No.
trying to understand.
It's like this. Hey, look, I see you got an F and you have to do a retake. However, should you choose to sleep with me, maybe I can help you.
Help me how?
Or I can forge.
Turn an F to into an A?
Yes.
That is sexual harassment.
I don't think so.
No, it is sexual harassment
I
because
disagree.
first of all, you are a person of authority. You're in authority.
I disagree.
Your terms of employment suggest if a student fails, let them fail and let them receipt the paper. You do not suggest. You do not suggest that sleep with me and then I'll turn water into wine. You do not do that.
I think you're being a hypocrite. Let me tell you how.
I'm not being a hypocrite. I'm being reasonable here.
And actually, this is a question. This is a challenge that many Ugandans face when it comes to the issue of corruption. So everyone will complain, oh, the public servants are corrupt, right? And that they demand bribes before they can offer you a service. Now, we can all agree that on the face of it is wrong and should be discouraged. But what about situations in which you, the customer, is actually in the wrong? I'll give you a simple example. Disconnection notice for perhaps electricity, water, or like traffic police. They catch you and maybe you don't have your permit, right? And then the guy says to you, hey, I've caught you without a permit. So I'm going to write you a ticket or I'm going to fine you. You're going to have to pay 500,000 at the nearest bank or whatever it is, right? And he says, but, and both of you can agree you are in the wrong. Your permit was expired. So clearly you're in the wrong. And he says, okay, but if you give me 10K, I'll let you go. 99% of Ugandans would take that deal. Do you agree?
I agree. And because it is happening, because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't make it right.
My point
it takes me back to my argument. Because you have said if I sleep with you, you will turn the F into an A, doesn't make it okay.
No, you're missing. Listen to me.
No, I'm not missing any point.
The point of mine that you're missing is
what?
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying it then stops falling within the umbrella of.
How does it stop?
It ceases to fall under the umbrella of harassment.
And it becomes what? It's like you telling me as my boss that, Olive, you want a promotion, right? Mm-hmm. For you to get the promotion, sleep with me and I'll give you the promotion. Isn't that sexual harassment?
I would not see it that way, personally.
It is.
I think for me,
because you're using your authority to call the shots.
To me, it
and
doesn't.
You know that I'm in.
To me, it doesn't.
And you know that I'm in a place where I'm vulnerable. So when you suggest, chances are that I'm going to say yes.
To me, it doesn't.
But if you just say, you know what, this is the money I can give you. I cannot give you an increment. Either I'm gonna stay or I'm gonna look for another job. If I'm a student, either I'm gonna read again and receive that paper or I'm gonna drop out. But if you give me the option of sleeping with you as my lecturer, then it is sexual harassment.
I don't see it that way.
And if a girl tries to seduce the lecturer to get the marks, to turn the F into an A, it is also sexual harassment.
I disagree.
It is.
I
actually had this same conversation on the branch talk over the weekend.
Listen to me.
And the gentleman I was talking to mentioned all these things as sexual harassment, and I agree.
And I'm telling you, I disagree.
Why
and
do
I've
you
explained
disagree?
why.
You're using authority to get what you want. And when you read about sexual harassment, they tell you if a person that has authority uses it to manipulate the situation, then they are committing.
I disagree.
It is sexual harassment.
I think it's an abuse of the term harassment, and I think it's unhelpful. In just the same way, the same Ugandans who will decry corruption if a roadblock is placed in their quest to obtain a service to which they are legitimately entitled and for which they fully qualify, if they've met all the conditions and they're met with an officer who simply says, unless you pay me, you won't get the service, or unless you pay me, I won't speed it up. To me, that is a certain type of corruption, a more blatant type of corruption versus...
It is still corruption, right?
Just
Even if it is just a certain type of corruption, it is still corruption.
But it's a different shade of corruption.
It is still under the blanket of corruption.
But the corruption that
like
99% of Ugandans participate in and condone and encourage is the one where it helps them get out of a sticky situation.
But you have used the word corruption. So whether it is 1%, 50, 30, 40, 60, it is still corruption.
But
so
for harassment, I think is look. I think so here's my thing, and mark me, get my words right. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's right to offer an avenue for a positive outcome. In where failing to agree to it would lead to a negative outcome. I'm saying it's wrong, but I think harassment is the wrong word to use.
And you see, the reason why all these things are going to be said, and I think now it takes me back to what you said in the beginning, that why did they wait up to now, is because we have beliefs like yours, that, if it benefits her in the long run, then it is not sexual harassment. And that's why we will never get to the bottom of this as women, because I believe that your mindset is shared by some other men. And me, a woman, I don't see it that way. And in places of work, we are going to continue being abused because men do not see that as sexual harassment.
Well, so I would like to inquire from women, because on this particular issue, it obviously, they believe it affects them personally, and so maybe they take it more personally. But I feel like if your approach to this debate is going to be a dogmatic one,
it's not really dogmatic.
Because think of it.
Simple examples.
Just a moment. I believe with every issue, the people debating have to concede the possibility that the other party may be right, and that the other party is not necessarily approaching the topic with any ill intent or malice. But the problem and why discussing this becomes contentious, and you've mentioned we seem not to be going anywhere, and this is because of the tendency to want to constantly malign those who disagree. So for example, the women watching this conversation or listening to it are going to be running around calling me a sexist, misogynist, this, that, and the other, which ends up causing many men to be quiet. Here I am trying my best to articulate what I believe is an open and honest perspective on the issue, and I think this perspective deserves consideration. It can be disagreed with,
I have considered what you have said. I have considered your perspective. But this is what I'm saying. If a person is using their authority to get something in turn for something, it is harassment. Because if what you're doing is care, Olive, you got an F, and I don't want you to fail, so I'm going to turn the F into an A.
That's not harassment.
You can just give it to me. But why do I have to first undress and sleep with you to get something? Term that.
So
make that make sense.
Okay. And I would have to say I am puzzled as to why it doesn't make sense to you. It's a simple thing. Look, it's a simple thing. You are being, in the same way, someone may present you with the opportunity of an easier way out of a situation. You don't have to take it. Now, and you refusing to take it,
let me ask you.
Let me say, what would cause for the outcome to be as it should be, based on whatever the prescribed penalties are for, I guess, being in the wrong on that particular thing, whether it's a traffic issue, whether it's a electricity issue. They've come to disconnect you because you haven't paid or haven't been paying, or you have a illegal line. They come to you and they say, I fine you 5 million. Or, if you like, you can give me something small, and then I'll let you off the hook. Now, it's wrong to do that for sure, but I feel like it's a different color of wrong to what some people might think would be a more overt type of wrong, and someone saying, hey, you are qualified and eligible to receive this service. You are entitled to it. However, I will prevent you unless you pay. I feel like those two things are not the same.
But you see, if you're to go legal, if National Water comes and finds that you have areas of 5 million, but you still have water running, and they check their meters and realize that you have actually been getting water illegally, they will still take you to court, and among other things, you will be charged with corruption. Rather, I don't know if it's a charge or something, but corruption.
So in other words,
it will still be mentioned. And this is what I'm saying. Whether you have agreed, whether the lecturer suggested that sleep with me and get a free mark, it doesn't make it cease to be sexual harassment. This has been my argument from the beginning. Because someone is benefiting from it, it does not make it, it does not
it now
cease,
makes it, okay, so
it
I
does
think,
not cease to be sexual harassment. Because my argument, my question was, if a lecturer is doing this out of the goodness of his heart, why does he need to sleep with someone? What happens to male students that cannot give sex to male lecturers? Don't they receipt the papers? So why don't you let the girl receipt the paper? And what happens to girls? What happens to girls who refuse to sleep with these guys?
Okay,
don't they receipt the papers?
This is so straightforward. Now, and maybe it's because in this particular instance, it's a sexual thing. So maybe you're just naturally more sensitive to it. But in the same way, listen, in just the same way that the police officer, out of the goodness of his or her heart, just out of that,
it is not goodness of their heart.
Listen
it
to
is
me.
utter
Let me make my
selfishness
point.
on the side of the police officer.
Let me make my point. The police officer, out of the goodness of her heart, the traffic police woman who pulls me aside, out of the goodness of her heart can say, hey, I'm letting you off the hook today. Be on your way and make sure next time, all your papers are in order. She could do that, okay? Out of the goodness of her heart. But now, if she says, in order, all factors remaining constant, I ought to be writing you a ticket or fining you or taking you to police station. Do you agree? Yes. Are you in violation? Yes. However, if you don't want to face that penalty, I'm giving you an easier option of, say, just give me 10K, let's say.
So
okay?
You see, she's saying give her 10K because it helps her. Because she's benefiting something, and you are benefiting something.
Now, I have the choice.
It doesn't mean that it is not corruption.
I have the choice to refuse the offer and simply
go and pay.
Accept my fine,
or
to go to court. Now, if I take up the offer, am I not culpable in that? Because it is a mutual exchange, and I think that's what's different.
And if you're caught,
this is a negotiation.
If you're caught red-handed giving her money, both of you are guilty because what you're doing is bribery.
So, to the student who accepts the condition of sex in order to obtain a pass mark where they otherwise would have failed, at the very least, will you concede mutual culpability?
Is it really mutual?
There you go!
No, it is not. No. There is no there you go. Is it mutual, Fatboy? Because you have used your position.
Gotcha.
You are saying you must sleep with me for you to get this A. It's not because I want to. It's not because I feel you. You are using your authority. The one thing, actually, let us stop comparing bribery.
I knew you wouldn't take responsibility
let us
this.
stop comparing bribery and sexual harassment. Let's go back into the workplace. Let's look at the men, because they have the power, the positions that, see, you have been working, you have been working seriously hard for a promotion.
Why?
And he knows you deserve it. Sometimes,
why in corruption is there mutual culpability?
Because we are talking
but
about...
not in an exchange for sex.
James, we
both
are talking
require
about
positions of power.
We are talking about sexual harassment, so don't throw me off the hook because you want to sound
it's
right.
It's the same principle.
All I'm saying is this.
Arguing from principle.
No, I'm arguing from principle too. And I have stuck on one thing. Authority. You have authority.
Same as the traffic cop.
Why are you using...
Traffic
and
cop.
that's why I kept saying both of them are wrong.
So, in a situation in which a female participates in a negotiation to exchange sex for marks in a scenario in which she would otherwise have failed, and then she accepts it, is there mutual culpability?
No. There isn't. There is no mutual culpability. There isn't. Because unlike the corruption, unlike the money exchanging hands, where if you had not suggested the sex, probably she was not going to suggest it. And if she suggested
like
it,
the traffic
if
cop.
she had not suggested it, no, you guys are, not you guys, drivers actually offer that money before the traffic cops even ask for it. You've been in a car.
I would suggest to you
on Ugandan roads, and you know that she stops you. You get out.
I would
behind
suggest
the
to you,
car, and you give them money without them even saying. Because if you're to be told to go on record and say, "Did she say, give me 10,000?" Most Ugandans will say no, because most times they don't ask. It is like non-verbal communication. But if you're to go on record, you cannot prove it that they asked for the money, but you gave the money. So going back to sexual harassment.
But there's mutual culpability in that scenario, right? You have participated in a corrupt act.
Yes, but you
are as corrupt as the cop.
You are still comparing apples and oranges.
Nope.
Okay.
We're arguing on principle.
Okay, let's go back to the workplace. Let's say there is mutual culpability between the student or the employee that has accepted to sleep with the boss to get a promotion. But let's go back on principle. How about the employee that refuses and is either fired or demoted? What is that?
I was very clear from the beginning and in the examples that I gave. In a scenario in which you would have been entitled to the position or the service and it is denied on condition that you must first provide sex, that qualifies as harassment to me. If he says you've got the right qualifications, the job is yours for the taking, however, unless you sleep with me, I won't give it to you. That for me is a clear-cut case. But if it's a scenario in which someone, if they are more qualified female applicants, let's say, or eligible females for that position, clearly, girls or ladies who may have had more experience in that field, have master's degrees, more papers, all that stuff. And then the person who is less qualified and less experienced is made to consider the proposition that the job could be hers if she chooses to. To me, that's not harassment.
It is still harassment.
I refuse to see it as harassment.
If I had a choice, I wouldn't have to sleep.
You would just not get the job.
The playing field should be leveled, so that men and women can compete competitively without ever having to worry.
The playing field is never level.
But why? And this is why we are talking about this.
Why
can't the playing field be leveled?
Not just between...
If you're hiring Fatboy, if you're hiring presenters and you want... Just blanket. You're not saying I want a female or a male. You put out an announcement. RX Radio is looking for presenters. Girls and boys come. All of them are good.
Oh, no, actually, sometimes I want... For some shows, I want male presenters. For some shows, I want female.
In the event that you have put out a call and you need presenters, you've not said girls only or males only, and all of them come. And then, after interviews or voice testings and whatnot, you pick out maybe a girl and a guy. But for the girl, you put the precondition of sleeping with the boss vis-a-vis the guy. Why shouldn't the playing field be leveled, whereby let's hire people on merit?
The problem is you never let me...
No, because
you never let me finish my point.
No, because you keep going and I can't believe what you're saying.
Of course you can't believe what you're saying. And this is why a lot of people think, people make fun of these Islamic countries, but the one thing they're not doing is pretending that the genders are equal. And I think this is going to be one of those topics where the genders just won't see it eye to eye. If there were 10 guys in this studio with us listening to this conversation, they would see that I'm making sense. Meanwhile, if there were 10 ladies, they would probably all think I'm a douchebag. There's just the way men and women see things. I'm starting to realize that we may just never see eye to eye, and this might be one of those topics.
When you say that genders are not equal, what do you mean? That girls are meant to be subjected to sexual harassment, whereas guys can just get the jobs?
Let's go back to the point.
Is that what you mean?
Let's just go back to the point of the playing field, and because you never let me finish the sentence.
No, when you say girls...
Here we go again.
No. Let's first start.
Invite me to finish the sentence.
Let us start here. When you say men and women will never be equal, are you meaning that even in hiring
I didn't say equal.
No, you said it. I said
the playing field is not level. Now, I was going to add an important qualifier, which you did not allow me to add, which is it is not equal even among men. It is not in just humanity. There is no such thing as level playing field. Certain people will enjoy different opportunities for various reasons. It could be nepotism, it could be family, it could be corruption, it could be gender-based, it could be anything. I'm just saying, even within genders, and women like complaining, let's say, about the pay gap. Men are not paid the same. Women are not paid the same as men. It's unfair. And I say to her, to any woman that says that, point me to any Premier League football team. She says, okay, Manchester United. Okay, are all players paid the same? Don't they all do the same work? So my point is, there will always be several factors that determine why some people enjoy more opportunities than the other, and the differences don't all boil down to gender or sex.
When it comes to sexual harassment,
there's so many other factors.
I am deciding not to veer off this topic. When it comes to sexual harassment in the workplace, tell me how the field cannot be leveled among men and women. Why should women be subjected to sexual vibes from bosses and men are not?
I never said that.
No, because you say the playing field can never be leveled. And my argument
was...
Not
between genders, between everybody.
My argument was, when men are hired, they are hired. If they qualify, if it is on merit, they'll get the job. A girl will have all the necessary requirements, and then the boss will still ask her for sex. And my question here is, why should we accept that for women, yet it's not the same for men? Because no one is subjecting men to things like this.
And again, this is where we kind of just have to be real and not utopian.
Mm-hmm.
The world will never be egalitarian, and any attempt to pursue that is just an exercise in wishful thinking.
And by real, what do you mean?
This is what I mean. I think being the sexual creatures that we are, there will always be a tendency for men to be attracted to women. It is... So listen, let me finish the thought, and then you can attack. All right? There will always be that tendency, meaning in an instance where a man would want to impose a condition before offering an opportunity, as it applies to women, most likely the thing he will ask for is the thing that men tend to want from women. Now, if it turns out that women wanted, a man's sexuality to the same extent or to the same degree, they probably, in that capacity, would also ask for the same. It's just that tends to not be the case. So, and that is why, and also considering that in a lot of instances, it'll be men in these positions of hiring. And so if they're the ones interfacing with the applicants, and some of the applicants are female, in the event that someone wants to impose a condition for an applicant to get a job, if the applicant happens to be female, most likely it will be sex that is requested for.
But you see, I don't disagree with men being attracted to women, because we are also not attracted to monkeys. We are attracted to women. We also know the art of seduction. But when I walk into an interview or into someone's office for a deal or for a job, I'm not walking in there with my seduction, persona or like on top. I go in as a professional. I've come here for a job. I've come here for a deal. Why won't you regard me the same way? And if you like me, why don't we have a separate conversation? Why are you tying the sex onto my ability to get the job?
Like I said, depending on the company that you're working for, some companies are, the owners or the managers don't care for this. They want the best people for the job. And if it turns out a woman is qualified for it, then that's the woman that's going to get the job. But I'm just saying, the world is not a perfect one, and there will be instances where these scenarios will emerge. My position is that if in an instance where a woman is fully qualified, and because let's not forget, it's not just on the basis of sex that women may be denied jobs. Sometimes you could be the wrong tribe. Sometimes you could be the wrong...
No, that one I understand.
Do you get what I mean?
But the conversation was sex right now.
Exactly. So the reason is, I think there's a bit of selectivity in to what degree this is of greater importance compared to the other variables which can be used to discriminate when it comes to hiring practice.
Sex entails my body culture. If I'm a Muganda
and you
don't hire me because I'm a Muganda, it doesn't take my dignity.
And that is
it
why
doesn't take anything from me.
And that is why the conversation is constantly skewed and why it will always be a personal one for women and not an issue that can be discussed objectively.
We are being objective. And
Do you
like
understand?
I said, if it is nepotism and it is on the lines of tribe, I understand that. You will not hire me, but you've not taken anything away from me. I have not felt you've not humiliated but you've still not humiliated me, because this
But that is
sexual
subjective.
harassment entails me taking off my clothes.
It's subjective.
For your own
Do you understand the
benefit.
meaning of subjective?
It is not. Maybe it is subjective.
This is what subjective
Which one
means.
is higher?
Subjective means this thing makes me feel a certain way.
Because
That's the meaning
it
of
does. I have to undress
I
for
didn't
your
say
benefit.
it doesn't, but
it
it's still.
does.
I didn't say it doesn't make you feel that way, but it's still subjective.
And no, when you say that women cannot discuss this objectively, you're taking away from us the fact that we need our dignity. Because I've seen I've seen a few cases of men who say that their female bosses are sexually harassing them, and most of them have even ended up quitting their jobs. Especially, I've seen some stories by, let's say, a married man. He says, this woman is on my case, she's older, rumor has it she's sick, and you see how it makes him feel. It is terrible. But men, compared to women, do not undergo this.
That's
at
the
higher
thing.
Numbers.
That's the problem.
And
it's
I'm
like,
not saying it is okay. That's why I said it is terrible.
That's why.
But we go through this.
I understand, but listen to me.
Every woman has gone through this at one point.
Listen to me, and this is why I guess these discussions will tend to not get anywhere, because we're just failing to agree on the principle, and on three, the definitions.
Being objective, and I don't know what objectivity is. What you call objective when I tell you that asking me to undress to get a job, to get a promotion, to get marks is wrong. I don't understand why you say that is not objective.
Let me explain it again. The reason why I brought up the issue of objectivity is because I mentioned to you that there are several areas of discrimination, not just based on gender, for which maybe sex might be a requirement, but there are several other reasons as to why a person may be denied an opportunity. The reason why this particular issue is given more prominence, or it is felt to have more gravity, is because of the subjective nature of how it feels to the victim of it. Subjective doesn't mean false.
Subjective gives it less relevance.
No, it doesn't.
When you say it is subjective, it means it's not as relevant as other issues.
Now,
that's what I hear, and I think that's what most women hear.
That's what you hear. That's what
we
most
hear.
women hear.
Because if you told me something, Fatboy, and I'm like, that is subjective, what do I mean?
It means that I acknowledge.
It is less
it
is less important.
No. And see, that's the problem. Like, I feel like these conversations reinforce gender stereotypes. How? Because I think any man listening would be able to understand that subjective does not mean that your experience is invalid. It acknowledges your experience.
What is the literal meaning of the word subjective?
It means it is relevant to me who experiences it and feels the brunt of it.
So do you want a man to first feel the brunt of sexual harassment for you to understand how important or how the gravity of it?
I didn't say it's not important. I said it's subjective.
Auntie, you're saying it is subjective because on the part of the person that is feeling it or going through it. And I'm asking, would it more important or more rational, or the gravity of it would the gravity of it be more higher because a man is going through it?
Let's clarify this point and move on from it. Subjective does not mean less important.
Well, according to the English I understand, that's what it means.
You are unfortunately reacting emotionally to it.
You see? There you go. Yes! Let's finish this conversation, because when I'm talking to a guy and he tells me I'm being emotional, the conversation is done. Because what else can we talk about? What else can we talk? Because the last time I checked, actually, I am being as objective as possible. I'm not being emotional. Because I have not gone through sexual harassment. And if I had, then I would be emotional. I am not. But still, I'm a woman. And I understand when women go through this. And when men tell us, when we try to have these conversations and you guys tell us we're being emotional, then the conversation is done.
And that's fine. And even my previous conversation about the same subject has ended the same way, where the girl just doesn't want to have the conversation because she's riled up.
No, you bring in words like you're being emotional, you're not being objective. Every time I'm having a conversation with a man or even a woman, and such words are used, it's like you're trying to manipulate my emotions so that I feel a certain type of way so that we cannot have a conversation.
Compare our demeanor in this conversation. From start to finish, I'm calm, I'm composed.
Let me tell you something. Maybe
I'm lucid.
That is your way.
You're angry, upset,
I am not
fuming.
angry. I am not angry. I am not angry. Maybe because you are not me. We have different feelings.
You are upset about emotions. This. It's quite clear.
I am not angry, and I am not being unobjective. I am being objective. But if you're telling me I'm emotional, then why are we having the conversation?
Because why would you dictate that the conversation is over?
Because you said I'm emotional. Why are you talking to an emotional person? If I'm emotional, it means I don't make sense. Everything I say doesn't matter because I'm speaking from the mindset of emotions.
Because every time I try to clarify my statements or state my beliefs, usually my statements are subjected to interpretation based on how it makes you feel. And you have said this: when you say this, I hear this. Instead of just taking my words at face value, instead you're telling me how the words make you feel. That by saying something is subjective, in your mind it implies I'm not taking the issue seriously.
But when you say something, and I said, when you say the word subjective, my understanding of subjective is that it is less important. It is,
and that is a wrong understanding.
And that is my understanding. Because when you read something, you understand it your way. I understand it my way. But then when you go ahead to cap it by saying that I'm being emotional, then it means everything I'm saying doesn't hold any water. Because
because I have extended you to the courtesy of taking everything you say at face value, and where I am confused about it, I have sought clarification.
And
the courtesy has not been extended. If you go
back to this conversation from where it started, I've been asking, and what do you mean? And what does that stand for? That was me seeking clarification from the beginning of this conversation.
And then after obtaining the clarification, insisting still that the way you interpreted it is different from how I meant it.
Not interpreted it, the way I understood. The way I understand the word subjective.
That's what interpretation
The way I
means.
understand the word subjective. That is how I get it.
That's what interpretation
So what does
means.
emotional mean?
So emotional means that because maybe you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but your eyes are flaring, your breath is intensifying.
What does emotional mean?
Clearly you are feeling personally hurt by the words you are hearing coming from me. You're feeling personally aggrieved and annoyed.
I am a woman to begin with, and we were talking about sexual harassment in places of work towards women.
So what does that lead to?
Do you expect me to discuss this and pretend that I do not feel what the women feel, that I do not resonate with their pain, with their confusion, with everything that comes with being sexually harassed?
Is that an admission that therefore you felt emotional about it?
It's not. No, I'm not going to say I was emotional. Let the one who is watching say it. Let you say it. I'm not going to say that. Because in as much as I could have been hurt to a degree, I still believe I've been being objective. I've not been arguing from the background of emotions, because when you're emotional, you do not make sense. That's why I feel insulted every time I'm having a conversation with someone and they tell me you're being emotional.
I don't think being emotional necessarily means you don't make sense. I think what being emotional has the risk of doing is it may cloud you from the ability to take someone's statements at face value and instead interpret everything assuming the worst intentions.
But you see, when you say something, you cannot say things and also determine how I react, right? When you're listening,
make up your mind. You said, I'm a woman, I'm resonating with the pain of women.
Now I'm speaking in general terms. when you're speaking or when you're listening to something on YouTube or someone is saying something on radio or on TV, your reaction is not like they cannot tell you how you react. You own your reaction. I'm owning my reactions. I'm saying I'm not being emotional. And you are saying that I'm not taking your things at face value. But you do not have a right to tell me how to take the things you've said. I have said you.
I do. I have the right to. I have the right to insist that you take my words at face value.
You cannot say things and then you
don't
tell
read
me,
into my words what I have said.
You cannot say things and then you tell me, it's like someone saying, don't be offended, and then they go ahead to offend you because they say don't be offended.
Did you feel offended?
No, I'm not. You see, I'm trying to elucidate something here. When someone tells me don't be offended and then they go ahead to say something offensive, my reaction, regardless the disclaimer at the beginning, you cannot disqualify it. Because you say don't be offended, it doesn't mean that I won't be offended.
So because in this conversation, here are the things that I've acknowledged. I've acknowledged that women feel bad when they feel that they're being victimized with sexual harassment. That I have acknowledged. And I have acknowledged that these feelings are real. And I have acknowledged that there needs to be a conversation about it. I do take the view that the conversation, however, requires to be more nuanced because there's a lot of complexity, and the reason why it's a perennial issue of discussion and why women feel frustrated in failing to permanently resolve it, I think, arises from the inability to explore the nuance and the complexities that bring up these situations and scenarios that are interpreted as harassment. And until that happens, and until that conversation can take place, we're just going to keep going around in circles. So I want for women to find peace and to find a solution to the problem and to get to a place where they feel completely happy. But in order for us to get there, I feel like there has to be some courtesy extended to where at least to not assume that anyone that would question or ask questions or have a different opinion is immediately has ill intentions or is completely disregarding women.
Fatboy, you like saying things like having a difference in opinion, and I am this person that recognizes people's difference in opinions. Even on this program, we don't always agree on different things, and then we agree on certain things. This is what I'm saying. Sometimes people hide behind the blanket of having a different opinion in holding true to the things that actually frustrate others. So you're saying that if a man suggests sex in place of a woman getting something and she says yes to him, then that is no longer sexual harassment. And my argument is, if you're a person in authority and you're using that authority to be suggestive like that, even when she agrees to do it with you, you were wrong in the beginning to even suggest it. Don't use your power. Don't use your authority. Don't use your position
I have a question.
to put another person in a corner. This is what I've been saying from the beginning.
But you've completely misinterpreted my perspective. Did I not? Do I have to repeat again the part where I said
don't repeat
that it is that to do so is wrong? Didn't I say that?
But then you said if she goes on and does it, then it is no longer wrong because
I didn't. No. I didn't say it's no longer wrong. I said that in my opinion, it no longer qualifies as harassment, and if it does, they are mutually culpable.
It qualifies as what?
I didn't say. I said it's not okay. It's wrong.
It doesn't qualify as harassment
because I feel like I want to respect the word harassment, and I think it should be used in its proper context. That's why I need you to define
it. It qualifies as what?
Would
you say it's consensual?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
But when
100%.
When a person in authority asks a subordinate to sleep with them or else they don't get a promotion, and she says she obliges him, then it is consensual.
No. In a scenario in which the promotion was due to the person, like was deserved for the person, and that they met all the criteria, and under ordinary circumstances, it would have been given. But this person creates a roadblock that would prevent this person from obtaining the promotion on account of first providing sex. I said very clearly, to me, that is black and white harassment. But then you said if she goes ahead and sleeps with him because she doesn't want to lose the promotion, then it ceases to be sexual harassment. No, I remember my example. In a scenario in which there are other more qualified candidates who are entitled to that position, who probably deserve that position. But if this underqualified person was given the opportunity to obtain the job, whereas it was not deserved, and the person agrees to it, to me, I don't see that as harassment.
So you don't see that behavior from the person that is asking for sex as predatory, because it means he's going to do it to not just this person. It is giving him the arsenal that he needs to use with every other student, with every other employee. You don't see that as predatory.
Because
they said yes.
The difference is I see this all around me in all avenues of life, not just in a sexual situation, but in situations where a person in a position to offer me something I want is communicating to me that in order for them to give it to me, that there are certain things that they need from me. Life is full of these negotiations and these compromises, and where you feel it violates your personal principles and dignity, I feel like you ought to turn it down. But if you do the pros and cons and decide, you make the value judgment that you're better off having it anyway, and you choose to me, I feel like at that point you have participated in that act.
So, and the reason why,
and you are equally if it is a wrong act, then you are equally culpable for it. The reason why I was asking you whether
you don't see it as predatory is because if he keeps doing this, if he's a lecturer and this time round this girl has really gotten an F, and because of sex he makes it a B or a C, whatever. Don't you think that he is going to reach a point where he is going to fail them intentionally so that he gets the sex to turn the F into an A or B?
If he does that, then that's predatory and that's harassment.
And who is going to pursue it to find out that actually the B was initial an F or the F was initial a B?
So tell me if you are familiar with the scenario of. Okay, think of a scenario like this where, you've got your typical student that parties, let's say, and we all know students like that who barely attend class, life of the party, they're not serious, and so some black and white cases where this person's likely to get a low grade, and when they do get that low grade, it's not even a surprise. And I'm saying that under those circumstances, where a lecturer would provide the person an avenue, a way out of it, it is wrong. It is an abuse of office and should be fired by the institution. But I would not use the word harassment to describe that transaction.
You see, all I hear is that, okay, use your authority to ask them to sleep with you. If they say yes, you're covered, you're not wrong, they are also wrong. But if they say no, then let it go. I feel like you're emboldening this behavior.
You feel like?
Yes.
But I'm not.
Yes, because if a man is listening to you and your argument, he will say, oh, by the way, Fatboy is making a point, because if she got an F...
Perhaps I am.
No, listen. If she got an F, then I have an opportunity to sleep with her so that I can turn it around. So lecturers are going to continue doing these things to girls because, well, when the girls accept to sleep with the lecturers, then it is not wrong.
The world is full of evil people and corrupt people. So I think the message that I would have for, young people, male or female, that can find themselves in these compromised situations is to accept that in life, to get what you want, you need to work hard, to try to not take shortcuts, because in the long run, those shortcuts catch up with you. So if you slept with a guy because you failed and you want to get a better grade, that can only take you so far, because in future, when you're faced with real challenges and where such avenues are not available, you're going to face, do you know what I mean? You will not succeed in life. And so really, it's something you want to discourage. I'm just being specific in that when such a scenario arises, even I will happily concede that it is wrong for the lecturer to do it and that he should be terminated from service as a lecturer by the institution that fires him. If it is presented to the lady who is of age and who is an adult and she decides she is open to that transaction, wherein she would otherwise fail based on the facts that she did not get the marks that would qualify her for a pass. If she decides to do it, it's wrong both on the lecturer's part and on her part, But the word harassment is not what I would use to describe that situation.
And I asked you, how would you describe it?
I would just
Give
say
it an adjective.
shady. Shady.
Wow.
Shady is the word that I would use. So I actually agree with you more than disagree. I think my disagreement just arises from differences of opinion in terminology and how it can or should be applied.
You know, when you say terminology, these are words. And even when you say shady, because a word has so many meanings, just like how we were arguing on subjective. My understanding of subjective is different. Your understanding of subjective is different. So you will not agree to call it harassment and call it shady, and someone else will understand shady as harassment.
So, for example, what would you make of the women, and there are some who intentionally use sexual access to advance themselves, as in they will literally present themselves to a person in authority in order to obtain a promotion or whatever other advantages. You and I can agree that it is improper, and what you want is merit-based selections. But I'm saying if a person volunteers herself to a person in authority, would you still use the word harassment to describe that transaction?
Actually, earlier, if you'll remember my argument from where I started, I said, and if a woman does it, it is still sexual harassment.
So you don't mean...
Because this man you're going to has not really told you he wants to sleep with you, has he? But you're presenting yourself, you're trying to seduce him so that you get something in return. You are harassing that man. Yes.
I wouldn't see it that way. I would not subscribe to that definition. If a woman approached a person and said, "Hey, give me the job and I'll give you sex," to me that's not harassment.
It is because there are men. Let's say there are men who hold their dignity very seriously. There are men who don't want to sleep around. They may be very few. It may be 1%.
Just tell her to bugger off.
Yeah,
end of story.
But still, for her coming...
You want me to go out? I was harassed.
No, but for her to come to you, putting you in a precarious position is actually harassing you. It is. It's just that men, because of your machoness and your ego, you do not want to agree that these things happen. Just like the argument about rape.
If a woman...
Women say they are raped, but there is also the argument that some men have been raped. But most men will not side with them because they're like, how can a woman rape you?
No. So if I would accept harassment towards a man if it's a female superior who is imposing herself on a male subordinate or a male applicant. If that were the scenario, I would agree that qualifies as harassment. But an applicant coming to the job, the manager, and saying, "Hey, dude, give me the job and I'll give you sex." Call that harassment,
it is still
I think we're abusing the term at this point.
No, it is. You go back and do some research. Harassment encompasses all that. It doesn't.
I'm saying it's wrong.
It stands out so much.
Just because someone thinks...
It stands out so much when a person in authority does it, but it also stands out if a subordinate does it to a superior.
Listen to me.
It is still harassment. The only reason why it is more pronounced when a person in authority does it is because why would you do that?
I'm telling you that
you hold all the cards. You have all the power.
You see, you have to be careful about how definitions are manipulated. Just because some journal somewhere defines a thing as a certain way doesn't necessarily make it so.
So we should go by
because
you define it as?
I think we have to use common sense and logic to come to a better understanding of what certain words mean and how they're best applied. Because remember, like for example, remember how if you questioned the efficacy of vaccinations, they redefined the definition of anti-vax. They broadened the definition of it in order to stifle discussion about the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines. You remember that?
Yes, I remember. And when you say common
So we
sense,
play fast and
when
loose
you
with-
say common sense and logic, as human beings, we all have minds of our own. What you call common sense may actually be nonsensical to me. What you call logic may not be logical to me, or what I think is logical may not be logical to you.
And that
so,
is why-
So when you say people have to apply common sense, maybe right now, as I speak to you, and as women collectively speak about these things, they believe they're using common sense. And there is no one person who is going to say what you're saying does not make sense because it doesn't make sense to me alone.
Well, anyway, I think this is a conversation and a discussion that will not be settled in this studio today. And I think for those who are listening or watching it in different platforms, can also, please, you can leave us your comment. Tell us what you think about it. Educate us. What has been your experience? Do you think that's quibbling over it to this extent? Do you think we're helping the discussion and the issue from being resolved, or do you think we're making the situation worse? We definitely would like to hear what you have to say. Of course, we encourage these conversations, even though we're not being funded by the World Bank and however many institutions are out there pouring billions to the government.
They should actually come and pour more billions here, because now we have these conversations.
Yeah, and that's why we rock. It's your number one station, RX Radio.